Yeah, thanks, David. So
Yeah, of course. Okay, the live stream is up, and I'm going to put the link here in chat so you can keep an eye on the Q&A over on the live stream page. There's a chat over there too.
Okay,
I would take care of it, this part.
All right.
Oh, great, thanks. You're live.
All right, awesome. And thanks everyone for joining today. We have Matt Zand from DC Webmakers presenting on tokenization of assets in the financial industry. It's certainly a growing topic these days, and one that I think a lot of people are interested in learning more about. And Matt has done a number of meetup presentations across a variety of cities, so we're very happy to have him in the New York meetup today. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Matt. And again, everyone, please feel free to answer any or ask any questions in the chat, whether on here or on the YouTube stream, and we'll do our best to answer them as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Chris, for introductions, and thanks, David, for setting up this event. And then thanks, Edgar, for also coordinating to have this event in London. And it's great to be here and present about this topic. As you mentioned, it's a very important topic, especially in the finance industry. And the title of this talk is about tokenization of assets in the finance industry. And also, I want to talk about a little more kind of operational or practical aspect of it, which is how you can implement know your customers and anti-money laundering aspect of it, because it's something that I was missing in my last talk, and I noticed that it's something that I have to incorporate into my talk, and I'm going to a little bit go over that in a few slides. So so this talks about tokenizations, and I want to kick off this talk by giving you a very high-level outline of the things that I'm going to talk in this short webinar. So first thing is that little bit definition of tokenizations. What's the difference between ICO, initial coin offering, versus security token offering? And then what are some of the legal definition involving security, and benefit of tokenizations, and then example of tokenization in finance industry. What are the challenges, especially with regard to implementation of tokenizations? And if the financial institutions are ready to launch tokenization, what are steps they need to watch or implement at a high level, what is called financial institution and token economy? And then I'll talk about industry adoptions and some of the resources, like legal resources or things like that, the article that people who want to learn more about this, they can read on their own. And before we jump into the next slide and talk about this, I just want to mention that I'm not an attorney, and I'm just giving you information. It's just whatever I'm giving in this presentation is just information. In a board of advisors, we have 2 or 3 attorneys that they are very specialized in the topic of asset tokenization, security tokens. So if you want to have a specific legal question, I would be happy to connect with those advisors. On the other hand, I'm not, I'm not giving information related to specifically regarding the legal part of it. I'm just giving information so that you have an idea of what it is. And if you want to delve into that in detail, feel free to do your own research and then consult with your attorney. Well, about me, I'm the founder of 2 major startups. One of them related to coding technology training, another one blockchain consulting and development. I'm also writing a book. I'm a leading author of the hands-on smart contract development with Hyperledger Fabric. It's focused on Hyperledger Fabric development. It's geared toward the technical audience. And then I have written a lot. I'm active in the community. I have contributed on different topics like Hyperledger, Ethereum, and Corda. And then I also have an MBA from University of Maryland. And then before that, I have done some consulting in the startup area. And again, you guys add me in LinkedIn. If you have any questions after this presentation, I would be happy to keep the dialogue open through my LinkedIn. And my LinkedIn link is on the meetup page. You can add me there. So basically, I try to make these talks as simple as possible, because that's how I usually differentiate the technical language from non-technical audience. So I try to follow that norm that I have in my talk. So in a very simple way, tokenization in a way is to make a bridge between a gap, make a bridge between real world assets, tangible or something that you can touch or intangible, and the one that is come from a digital, world. And again, in following a slide, I'm a little bit talk about how this, how we can bridge the gap between these two different type of assets, and what a role blockchain plays in this in these transitions. So one of the things is that every one of us is familiar with tangible and intangible assets. For example, when you buy a bike in a traditional fashion, the buyer and sellers are going to exchange the payment and the asset itself. So you're going to see and touch the asset. It's going to move from one person to another person's, and also the buyer going to buy the whole asset. They're going to buy buy a fraction of the bike. It's going to buy the whole bike in one single transaction. So that's what we know in a traditional sense, right? So on the other hand, with advent of technology and with adoption of the distributed ledger technologies, we're going to see a situation where a person's going to own a fraction of that asset, and the asset itself is not going to move. So if there's a fine art, if there is a sport car, this sport car and fine art location is not going to be changed. It's going to stay there. However, we're going to experience more mobility with respect to the ownership of that asset. So that's where distributed ledger technology and blockchain come to picture or play a role. So again, that is like a very high level summarization of what the role of the tokenization is. So again, tokenization can turn almost any assets into a digital token, enable digital transfer of ownership and storage without necessary. So that's another aspect. When I'm talking about benefit of asset tokenization, you're going to notice that we follow the norms of the blockchain, which means that removing the third party or intermediate. Well, so once the asset tokenization become popular, then we just need to know that what are type of tokenization are available, and what are the properties or differences between different tokenizations. So one of them is security token offering, or STO, and it's also different compared to the venture capitals and initial coin offering and initial public offering. So there are some differences. At the end of my slide, I'm going to give you a graphic of differences. Compare these three. I think I got it from Ernest Young. The differences between this security token versus ICO and versus venture and initial public offering, with regard to different factors like risk, mobility, things like that. That's very good for you to know it. So as I said, basically under tokenization, the way that you can reflect your ownership is to show that you have a digital certificate which reflect the ownership of that asset instead of just taking hold of the physical asset in a traditional way. And so security tokens have there are some differences between security tokens and initial coin offering. The major one is that initial coin offering is mostly used for the utilities. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit here. So initial coin offering, or ICO, can be deemed as a cryptocurrency or utility token. And their requirement is different, because when you are doing STO, the requirement is different, because the security tokens, you need to do a different requirement. And then also the things is that STO is different from the utility token, because the nature of STO is that you buy this type of token in anticipation of increasing their value, or you may buy the STO because you're buying like equity. So the nature of STO is mostly investment, and that investment usually is backed by a company who is issued that STO. And so again, you're buying STO mostly because you want to invest, buy the equity, or invest in some things, and you're anticipating the value of that token is going to increase over the time. On the other hand, when you're doing ICO and then when there's utility token involved, that token is used as a medium of transaction in the system, and its value is going to stay fixed in the systems. So these are just need to know about this too. And then also another aspect of differences is that the requirement for filing with Security Exchange Commissioners are different with these two, because they need more requirement with STO. And on the other hand, both of them have one thing in common when it comes to the use them for raising fund, is that they have to follow the Know Your Customers and Anti-Money Laundering requirement, so that they have both in common. Unless you use the token only for utility where there is no financial payment involved. So as I said, one of the aspects of one area in which security are used is just the ownership of the company, like equity, you know. So you buy that, and then that kind of gives you a fraction of ownership of the company's asset or kind of the equity of the company. So so another requirement for security is that they should be the most they can only be traded on at the registered trading platform. Participate have to follow that. They have to follow the you know, that, and then they have to follow all the. So whoever is registered brokers and dealers in that platform, they have to follow regulations. And then one of the things is that, for example, when there is security tokens and you want to raise the fund, and if there is if there is accredited investors involved, there is another, for example, requirement to make sure that those investors or those people are participating in the investment have at least $1 million in asset in the United States. So these are, for example, part of the requirement when you implement security tokens and when you are dealing with accredited investors. So, well, security legal definitions varies from country to country, from jurisdiction to jurisdictions. As a whole, they look at it as a tradable financial asset. However, again, you get the country, whatever definition, and then not only definitions, you have to see how things has been evolved, to what extent your country support has a framework for supporting these security tokens from their filing, registration, and trading, and whether they allow the secondary market trading too. And then what type of the asset your country allows to be traded on security, that's another thing. For example, in the US, security include debt securities such as commercial papers, bond, debentures, equity security, and stocks, you know, or maybe derivatives. Again, you have to consult with your attorney or an accountant to see in your country what is the legal framework and what type of asset you can securitize, and then what is the requirement along for that one. So now that we have some understanding of what is asset tokenization is, or what is tokenization is, what are the difference between security token and utility token or an ICO, here are some of the benefits that we want to a little bit talk about that. So in general, there are 4 major benefits for using tokenizations. The first one is greater liquidity, means that if you have a commercial real estate or fine art, and you're looking for someone who pay a large lump sum of money, the chances are you might not be able to sell it. So that asset might have a low liquidity. So if you're dealing with asset, you know, traditional asset as a very slow liquidity, you can use tokenization to give it more liquidity. And then since there is no third party, since there is no intermediate party involved, transaction fees are lower and faster, and more transparency because you're using blockchain. The records are are immutable. No one can change those transaction record, and it's transparent. Everyone in the blockchain have the same record of the ledger, and more accessibility because traditionally speaking, there was some restriction with regard to who can buy the asset. You need to be accredited. You need to have certain amount of asset before you can enter transactions. On the other hand, using tokenization, you can allow fractional ownerships, people who just invest small amount to take a fraction of asset ownership. So a little bit talk about this benefit more in detail. Again, if there's something like a fine art and you just, it has very low liquidity, you can use asset tokenization to give it more liquidity and make it more tradable in the secondary market. And then obviously, because you're using smart contracts, everything's are automated, transactions are faster, cheaper, and reduce the, remove the intermediate. And then more transparency, because again, it's immutable right of ownership. And again, if you're familiar with how blockchain works, some of this might be obvious to you. So I just skip the one that are obvious. So more accessible, it means that it opens investment in asset to a much wider audience due to reduced investment amount and periods. So one thing is that when you're putting together your asset tokenization plan, it's good to also put together kind of the agreement with the people who are buying this asset, and it also be incorporated into your smart contract, so that when people buy that, they are also, it's called digital contract, so that they can, agree on that terms when they are executing that kind of the transaction in the system. And now, some of the example of the asset that you can use, tangible asset, intangible asset, like hard goods, fine art. It can be financial assets, can be consumable, like farm product, like medical devices. It can be trademark, it can be licenses, royalties, patent. For example, if you are writing a book, and there was a couple of examples that you are writing a book, but then you want to share the ownership of that book with your potential readers, so they can buy the tokens from you in a way to invest in your book. Copyright, if you have patent that you want to share the asset, raise the fund for that patent, things like that. And again, for collectibles and devices, can be automobiles, can be special sport card, fine art, medical devices, and again for real estate. So my things is that the link to this slide is available. You can go back to this to realize what kind of the asset you have, or what kind of the asset has more potential for tokenizations. And I'm just quickly review this, and then I give the rest for you just to research it on your own. So one of the things is that, so what are the challenges? So just to recap what we discussed so far. We discussed about what is asset tokenization, what are the difference between ICO and STO, security token versus utility token, and what are major benefits of using asset tokenization. Now the question is, if everything said so far is so attractive, so what are the challenges? Why is not been so widespread? Why has not been adopted so widely in industry? So the challenges is that security laws varies from one country to another, or jurisdiction to another, and some of these security laws are evolving. Hasn't been adopted yet in some countries. Some countries are still trying to figure out a way to develop a framework around that. And other two challenges are where to register and issue your security token. Is there any, for example, platform where you can issue or register your security token in that country, your country? On what secondary market you can trade them. So these are some of the challenges that you're going to experience. So so despite of the challenges, once you're ready to launch your asset token, once you launch your asset tokenization product, there is a infrastructure. There is what's called the value chain involved from A to Z of this issuing. So basically, you first need to identify what your target asset, what asset you want to tokenize. So you need to figure out what asset you want to tokenize, and then how you want to distribute that asset, how people are going to buy that and trade that, buy that asset, and whether those people who buy the asset are going to be able to trade, and how you want to trade that. And then if there is any payment involved for receiving and buying the trade from native currencies, which is like fiat currency, or if you allow participant in your platform to trade like a digital wallet or ERC20 wallet, if you want to allow people inside your blockchain system to use cryptocurrency or other kind of the token as a means for their trading these assets, whether you allow such things, and then is any payment being cleared from between native currency and the digital currencies, and if there any kind of the settlement involved, for that clearing the transactions, and then to keep the record of anything happens in your system, just in case that for legal requirement they want to do the audit on your transactions to make sure they are not doing anything suspicious. And then is there whether whatever you're offering here is a part of the other financial services offered by your company. For example, if you're a bank, how are you going to integrate this asset tokenization with what you already have in your bank system? For example, HSBC, I think they are tokenizing their debt, and then they're also integrating that with their traditional normal financial services that they offer. So the key here is that I'm going to talk about in the following slides that the steps discussed here varies because there's 3 steps: issuing, trading, and buying, selling, and additional. So depending on what type of asset you're tokenizing, if it is a security token, utility token, and what kind of things involved, the steps discussed here may vary. But just use this as like as like a template, something that you need to keep in mind. Well, so one of the things I'm going to talk in the following slide is that if your bank, if your financial institute is interested to explore the asset tokenization or token economy, what are things they need to watch for? What are things they need to consider or take into consideration? So in general, there are 5 things that they need to look for and you have to follow. One is that business model. Another is a platform. What platform do you want to do? The public, for example, blockchain network like Ethereum, ERC20, or they want to use it private like Hyperledger? And what are the cybersecurity precautions they need to take into considerations? What are things regarding the compliance, and what are things about jurisdiction and legal framework? So, so I briefly touched upon these 5 kind of the steps for implementing the token economy in a financial institute. And again, you can use this as a template and then use that as a way to build your own kind of the plan. And then I also talk about in the compliance section, I am going to talk about know your customers and anti-money laundering implementation, because that's where the compliance part comes. And then there also I'm going to talk about a smart contract standard for asset tokenizations. So so the first item in our list is business model. And so it talks about deciding how to structure your token, what token to issue. So first of all, decide what is the asset you want to tokenize, how to structure your token. Is token value going to stay stable? Is the value going to go up? Who's gonna have the initial tokens? How many tokens you want to issue at the beginning? All these factors need to be taken into considerations and put together in your kind of the business model and your plan. And so how you want to accept those, how someone can take position, how someone can buy that token through the native currencies, through other cryptocurrencies, and how the persons can trade that in your system. So all of these factors need to be carefully put together. So, and then is there any kind of do we need to leverage as a custodian bank or paying agent to create the lifestyle cycle event transactions? So again, other factors you have to figure out how you want to do the life cycle of the token, from the issuing the token, and then if you want to deprecate the token at the end, what is the life cycle involved, what part is involved, and if your company need to back that tokens that they're issuing, things like that. So this is a business model. So business model, you talk about what you want to issue and how you issue it and other factors that involve in the business part of it. So platform integration is more talk about technical part of it, the operational part of it. Like depending on what business model you choose, meaning that, okay, what type of the asset you want to tokenize, whether it's utility, whether it's security, you know. For example, utility tokens, you can do it, this Hyperledger Fabric can be private network. On the other hand, for security tokens, public blockchain network like Ethereum would be more favorable, allows public to access that. So depending on, again, what business model you choose in previous slide, you can decide what are the parameters for your operating model would be. So one of the major component is a blockchain platform. Do we need to do that, for example? What are the regulation involved for that? Whether it's a public or private network? And what's the product strategy? You may be surprised. I've spoken to some clients that they have a very brilliant idea about asset tokenization, like security token. They have very good developers for Ethereum, ERC20. They have very good lawyers. They have very good business models. On the other hand, they fail so badly because they don't know how to market, how you can find the right brokers in the market to market their token and sell that token to potential customers. So it has to be a holistic business plan from A to Z, from developing a business model, issuing that, and then market that to potential brokers and buyers and sell that and let that kind of the pick up, by the network. So you have to have everything in right place. It's not just a technical thing. Some people think that asset tokenization only requires one lawyer and one developer. That's not the case. You have to have a very good marketing plan to get it to the right audience. And then obviously the cybersecurity play a very important role. So especially if you're dealing with security tokens, because security token is the one that you are collecting the money. I mean, like you are selling the token for people so that they're going to invest. They're investing, and you're dealing with a lot of money of the people. And in a public blockchain network, permissionless, so it's open to more attacks and risk. And so it's better to have a very good understanding of cybersecurity and to make sure that infrastructure, whatever you're implementing on the cloud, or is kind of has done a decent job on cybersecurity preventions. So, and then this is another area that I need to emphasize, because I've spoken to some folks that they are junior developers. The company hired them to build asset tokenizations. And what they do basically is that, okay, I need to do asset tokenization. All I need to find is Ethereum ERC20 code on a GitHub. I'm going to just copy that GitHub code, a little bit twist it, and just do the test, launch it. But in reality, that's not going to work, because unfortunately, many of the juniors developers, they forget that there's something called a smart contract security audit that you have to run, especially before you launch your smart contract into the productions and the cloud. So this is a very good article we put on our website about the checklist of all the smart contract security audits that you need to run. And we also, our company is also specialized in kind of the audits. So in case that you need our assistant, we'd be happy to help you guys. But my point is that just make sure that before your smart contract goes to the cloud and the production stage, run the smart contract security audit. And especially if you're doing on a public blockchain network. Well, when it comes to compliance, two major things is anti-money laundering and know your customers. And anti-money laundering, basically, you need to check, make sure that your customers are not listed in a part of the terrorist organizations. They don't have any record of past, have not been blacklisted, Thomson Reuters has a very good database of the list of banned people, organizations that you can you can use API to cross-reference your customers with that list. Regarding know your customers, there are a couple of third-party API that you can use to cross-reference your customers. And I'm a little bit talk about how you can implement the know your customers in the next slides. So, so the question is, so we know about in most asset tokenization projects, you need to implement know your customers and anti-money laundering. So how you can build and integrate these things into your applications? So for sake of conversation, I'm going to simplify this. Imagine that you have one blockchain network that does your main job, like asset tokenization, like a security token. You need to create another standalone application that handles your KYC and AML. So at a very high level, what you need to do, you need to create a standalone application for your know your customers anti-money laundering. Then all the customer information are stored in a central database. And then you use a blockchain to store hashes on a decentralized network. So, so what happens is customer information are stored in a central database. Then you run a series of API calls to check and verify if they are passing the know your customers and anti-money laundering check. Once the customer is past the checklist, you're gonna create their hashes and store that digital hash in a digital wallet on a decentralized network. Then that hash is gonna be used in your asset tokenization system. So there are two different systems. So one, your main one that you're using, and the other one is for your customers. So then there's going to be an API between your main blockchain application and your customers anti-money laundering one. So any hashes that participate in your main blockchain application need to be clean, need to be verified in order to participate. And legal and the authorities, they should be able to access these applications at any time. So for example, if there's a suspicious activity with regard to a hashtag in your system, right, then authorities can easily search this database to find out what are the information, contact information of this hashtag is and why he's doing this kind of the suspicious activities. So these are two different applications. Now, if I want to get a little more operational, a little more technical than that, I'm going to tell you is that you develop an identity protocol. So why is it important? Because when I'm talking about identity protocol, it varies from country to country. It varies from business to business. So, for example, we had the case before that the bank was even recording the video of the customers who are signing up to the platform and using AI and machine learning to identify their face with their ID. So that's called identity protocol, to realize what are the identity information you need to collect based on your requirement or based on the requirement, and then use the smart contract to process those through the API call with a third-party identity management. And then once it's identified, you can create an address or hashtag for them. So, so as a result, wallet holders or users going to give their information, ID card, residential card, whatever information you're going to collect from them, they're going to upload that. And then whether you can do it manually by a compliance officer is going to verify them, or you can use a third-party API to verify that information. And once that's been verified, a record is created by a smart contract to map each address with map each identity with a hashtag or address, and store that hashtag or address in a decentralized network. And then, so again, now one of the things that then you can use that hashtag information for people to start buying a token or do the transaction in your system. So one of the things is that in order to give an incentive, because identity of the people usually changes, sometimes changes every now and then. For example, if someone is accredited investors, you may need to make sure every 6 months his update is status, right? So in order to give incentive to the people to keep their identity informations and all their contact information up to date, you can also create a reward system in your Ethereum wallet, so that they whoever keep this record updated and good standing, they're going to receive the reward or token as incentives. And CEX and DEX are two third parties for verifying the identity of the people to make sure that they're not doing anti-money laundering or knowing your customers. They're a very good third party for identity verifications. And then again, to summarize here, as I mentioned in previous slide, you need to have a centralized system, then Ethereum or in a blockchain smart contract to convert that that into a hashtag or address, whoever has been verified. Then after that, you're gonna use that token, use that hash address in your normal asset tokenization project. Now, with regard to identity management, so there are some kind of the distributed ledger technologies or tools available in blockchain. If you are looking for a private one, if you are like coming from Hyperledger community, you can use a Hyperledger Fabric for creating identity management platform and converting identities to their hashtags or addresses. You can use Hyperledger Fabric. On the other hand, if you're looking for more specific distributed ledger technology under the Hyperledger ecosystem or family, you can look into the Hyperledger Indy, Hyperledger Aries, and Hyperledger Iroha. All of them are very good for identity management. And if you want to do the public one, that's what's for private. If you want to do the public one, Ethereum is good, and ERC20 wallets are also very good. You can try them too. Now, the things I just want to also mention here is that the things I want to mention here is that there are something called security token standard for a smart contract. Again, when I talk to people and they say that, look, I just want to raise money by security token, and I ask them what is the ERC you are selecting? It's ERC20. But again, my point is that if you're really if we're doing some research and exploring different kind of the ERC based on the performance and relevance to your assets. For example, ERC 7021 is for non-fungible tokens, is more relevant for non-fungible tokens. So just because someone is doing ERC 20 doesn't mean that you have to do ERC 20. It's just that it's more popular, there's more support, and there is more kind of the libraries available. But you can by all means, you can explore other kind of the other standards. And then I know SRCs for the Ethereum Swamp decentralized database that used for off-the-chain database management. But that's also a very good one if you're using Ethereum. And now the last part of the things is the last part of the financial institution for adopting a token economy is jurisdictions, which again, legislative and regulative framework varies from one jurisdiction to another. And so you have to follow their rules, and these rules sometimes changes. So for example, if you are raising fund in international, you have to follow different geographical areas, legal requirement. So again, you need to discuss with an attorney that is aware of the requirement in that specific region or country. Well, with regard to industry adoptions, HSBC moved $20 billion in assets to the blockchain. Again, they try to tokenize their debt. JP Morgan launched what's called cryptocurrency-backed or stable coin, and Singapore Exchange also backed Ethereum, the security token platform. And again, my information is just for 2020, and I'm guessing that things are happening more rapid, more fast right now. So if you check research online, there might be more things happening right now. These are lists of top IPOs and SCOs and ICOs that's happening in 2020. And as I said, with regard to industry adoptions, there are different factors. So when you're comparing IPO versus SCO and ICO, there are different factors that you can credibility, dividends, underlying, risk, cost, issuers, platform, So I got this from Ernst & Young. So they did a very good research on comparing these three different fundraising platforms. with regard to different factors. So it's very good. You can go back to this slide to to see the differences between these three. And now one of the things is that so if you want to learn more about security law specific to the United States, you can read the article here. And Brian Wu, a couple of people in the advisory board, they also have written a book. I think, to the best of my knowledge, is the only book right now available in the market on security tokens. So I would be happy to share the link in the meetup with those interested to read more about legal framework in the United States around security tokens, security token standard and implementation. It's a very great book for those interested to explore this area in depth. So these are very good articles for the platform for kind of the law, some current law around the blockchain security token. And if you want to learn more about initial core versus security token offering, you can read some of this article website. And that's the book I told you guys about, Security Tokens and Stable Coins, Quick Start Guide by Brian Wu and two other colleagues of ours. You can read that from his very good book on the topic. And so I'm ready to take your question now. So
thanks a lot, Matt. So we have one question asking why issue STOs on public blockchains when they generally have a single issuer, such as the company? Is it better because of easier access to secondary markets, or are there other reasons?
So let me see. One thing is that you're asking me. You're asking me why security token is better. Sorry, I didn't catch your question. Let me see if I can read the question. Is it on the, let me see the chat here, just a second, chat here. Okay, I see the questions. So they, why issue STO on a public blockchain when they can generally have a single issuer's company? Is it better because it's easier access to secondary market or other? Why you issue that? Okay, why you issue STO on the public blockchain? Because the reason is, you want the public to invest in your company. It's fundraising, right? So you want a public to raise fund for your company. On the other hand, on a private blockchain network, only the people who are invited to the network would be able to participate. So that is not possible when you're raising your fund from crowdfunding. Does that make sense? Crowdfunding. So you got this STO a public blockchain as a way to raise funds, as a form of crowdfunding. So someone asked,
yeah, but you could take, sorry, this is a question asker. You could take your private chain that you're still controlling the issuance on and open it up to the public as much as you want, without it having to commit hashes to a public blockchain. So I was just wondering if there were other reasons to do that.
Yeah, see, my thing is that, so when you are launching your security token on a private blockchain network, right, only people who are a member of that blockchain would be able to access or do anything in that blockchain network, right? So it's private to only members, right? So on the other hand, when you do the public blockchain network, everyone can join the node, can participate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But I'm just saying, even with a private network, you can actually open it up fairly broadly and publicly, basically just limiting it to the same KYC AML you're going to have to do anyway for STOs.
Yeah. I mean, of course. So if you have private one, you can also, as you said, you can open it, because the difference between private and public one is just that restriction, right? So if you relax some of the restrictions, then you can open it to the more public one. At the same time, you take hold of some part of that you don't want to share with the public. It's become like a hybrid, and that's possible. And then when it's come to the newer custom anti-money laundering, as I suggested, it should be a separate application, separate from the main one that you're dealing with, the private one.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Okay, another question was, let me see quickly here. Is just 1 second. The question was that, can you discuss the advantage of securitizing real estate where token versus a structure like? So honestly, I'm not familiar with a structure called REIT. All I know is that I know that, for example, commercial real estate, it's very slow. And I know that, for example, in DC, so many commercial real estate are like half empty, the building. So it's very slow. So, and then it's very expensive for people to buy those kind of it's very difficult to find a buyer that want to give you a lump sum payment for all the, the building. So you can tokenize that. I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure about REIT. All I can tell you is that when you're using a secure token for your real estate, you can raise fund. On the other hand, I think the answer to the question comes down to the regular legal requirement, because if REIT has less legal barriers or requirement, obviously might be a better choice than using security tokens. So again, I'm not familiar on REIT. And then who was the second question? Can you go back and show the last two resources slide? I didn't get a chance to grab the info. So guys, I think I would suggest you guys to go to a meetup page, and then there is a link to this slide. Just download that, and then all the resources are there just for you on your end. If you want to have this copy of this presentation, just go to a meetup, click on the link there, you can have it there. So someone asked trust. I would be reluctant to buy security in a company and allow them to own and maintain the ledger. What is steps?
It wasn't a question. It was just a comment on the other discussion about a public blockchain versus a private one.
Yeah. So basically, so one of the things, what you are saying is that for stop them from raising my ownership today. Okay, that's a good question. So see, that's one of the reason I mentioned that when you do the security token, you have to comply with Security Exchange Commissioners, right? And they want to make sure that you're not going to disappear over the night, right? And they just want to make sure you follow the rules and regulations. And you have to put something like guarantee that, you're going to maintain the application, right? So I think that gives some form of assurance who people are participating in the platform compared to the using, for example, something that is not being backed. You know what I mean? So guys, let me see if I have, so Chris, do you see any more questions on the YouTube? I'm sorry, on the Twitter?
On YouTube.
On
Can I
YouTube,
ask
we don't
one
have
more question?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for tokenization of something like real estate versus a title, what's the difference between that? Like, if I wanted to move, we've heard about use cases for blockchain to like move like titles to a blockchain, and then is that the same concept or is it different?
Okay, that's a good question. So you see, in Brazil, they did a use case on blockchain. In Brazil, the problem that they had was that so many people claimed that they own the land, but they didn't own the land, right? So there was so much corruptions, and so the issue with title, like a land title, comes back to the identity management. Using blockchain to make sure that they cannot change the record. So, for example, when you're talking about the land and ownership of the land title, that's different from the. So I mean, both are different. So two different things. So when you are dealing with title, you want to make sure that the person who owns that record is immutable, and at any time you can verify who is the owner of that title is. On the other hand, when you're talking about real estate ownership, there might be a case that the owner might be 1,000 different people, each of which has a portion of that ownership. And not only that, but those people who owns the portion of real estate would be able to trade that, with another person's. So coming back to your question, there are two different things. One is that doesn't require any legal requirement. It's just a title. It's very simple to implement. It's just application of blockchain. The another one is to setting that asset ownership to a number of people, which you need to follow the legal requirement.
Okay.
So any more questions? Okay, that's someone said that. I can say that's this one. Okay. So Chris, do you see any questions on the Twitter?
Not that I've seen. Let me take another quick look.
Nothing on YouTube?
No, nothing here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned in a previous slide about a SEX or DEX verifying identity, and you know the DEXs I've used are completely just using your address on the blockchain. So how would a DEX, and even folks like FTX, because they're offshore, they don't really do any KYC, AML. So how would they verify the identity and communicate that to in this scenario?
So coming back, I mean, DEX and then the other one, both of them are like example that you can use, because one of the things is that they may have a very good database of some kind of, for example, global terrorists. So, some users that are operating in a global stage, or changing their names, right? This comes to running these New York customers. Most likely for anti-money laundering in the United States, we use Thomson Reuters database. So for that anti-money laundering, for New York customers, you get the information and you verify that. For example, in the United States, there are some third-party companies, then they can verify Social Security, So you just connect the API to them, give the Social Security and the first name, last name, and the birth date of the persons. They're going to say, okay, we know this person is legitimate. This information, matches with what the government has on their record, right? So my point is that those are two examples. And when it comes to the country or locations that you're implementing these Know Your Customers, you may look into some of these third-party providers that are connected with your government databases.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So let me see. I think if any more questions, information details, find the limited API, some implementations, remote exchange and brokers, public blockchain provide trust that the private is more sensitive.
Matt, maybe one thing we can do is if you send me this deck, I can attach it or something to the meetup invite, and then people can get access to it.
Yeah, see, what happened is, I think if you look at the messages comment, I think Igor already sent the link.
Even better. Even better. Mm-hmm. Perfect.
And yes, so one thing is that if there is no more questions, Chris, I think we're almost done with this.
One question. Can you explain what kind of and this is not a plug for you. I'm just asking the honest question from anybody listening. I want to know what kind of services you offer and your company offers in this space.
Yeah, so I have my company offers we offer blockchain consulting, development, and training. So for blockchain consulting and development, depending on the client, we usually do the research, advisory, and architect for whatever they want to build. And then after that, depending on the client, we do the proof of concept or minimum viable product, or we go into production. So that's we do. And then in the finance industry, we are doing some projects for bank right now. And then on a board of advisors, we have people from JP Morgan. And then the things is that regarding blockchain training, we offer self-paced and live courses in all blockchain platforms like Hyperledger, Ethereum. And yeah, so we offer this kind of development. And then I myself, I am the president of the DC Web Makers. And at the same time, again, people are working on my book. They also are participating in our project too. And then we also have people from, for example, we have people who used to work at IBM. Most of my senior teams have 15, 20 years of experience in industry.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Guys, again, it's very nice. Chris, I think we're almost, again, if anyone finds questions, any questions, you need to want to contact me or ask me, I think guys can add me LinkedIn, and you just message me LinkedIn. It's very easy to find. There's a link to my LinkedIn in the meetup. You can message me there, and you can contact me. Again, one of the things is that if you want to do asset tokenizations, make sure that you follow the legal requirement, do your research, and make sure that you know what you're doing. And don't forget the security audit on a small contract. Don't forget that especially if you're doing something public.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt, for presenting, and thanks to everyone who attended and asked some great questions. So we're looking forward to seeing how the tokenization space takes off over the next few months. And if anyone has anything they want to present on at a future meetup, please feel free to reach out to me. And look forward to your attendance next month.
Sure, definitely. Thanks, Chris, for having me, and then thanks, Igor, for organizing things, and thanks, David, for hosting this event. And thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.